Am I telling the truth? Last night was incredible. And just listening to the sound, boom, boom, and knowing with every boom, every rock that falls, there's a life that rises. And that was intense for me. And I walked away thankful to God for the life change that every one of those rocks represents, but also with the heaviness in my heart, because what I know is that there are still dozens of you that need to let go and let God do something powerful in your life. And you know it too. But here's what else I know. Here's what I know. If you didn't drop the rock last night, it wasn't because you don't think God is good. It's because you don't think you are good enough. And that, my friend, is nonsense. Most people who never come to Jesus Christ, it's not because they're critical of God, it's because they're critical of themselves. And all of us have reason to be. Some of you made promises to God like, I'm going to be pure until I'm married, and now you're not. Some of you swore like, I will never do drugs, but you did. Some of you promised like, I will never get addicted to pornography. I'll never cheat. I'll never lie. I'll never steal. And yet here we are in the reality of our lives. And Peter, of all people, Peter understands. And I want to tell you a story this morning. It's a true story out of the Bible. And it really starts the night before Jesus died. You just imagine in an upper room. It's a small room with a table that seats about 13 people. And there Jesus is with his 12 disciples. And when they walked in, you probably know this, but Jesus, before the meal, knelt down and washed all their feet in a sign of unprecedented humility. And then what Jesus does is he institutes the Lord's Supper. It's a Passover meal, and he takes the bread and says, this is my body broken for you. This is the cup of my blood of the new covenant poured out for you. So he institutes the Lord's Supper. So you got the foot washing, the Lord's Supper. You know what happens next? This is unbelievable. Unbelievable. It says, a dispute arose among them as to which of them was considered to be the greatest. Like, how can you argue about who's greatest when Jesus just washed your feet? And Peter was in the midst of it. You know he was. He looked at Iscariot and said, what are you talking about? You're the greatest. You're not the greatest. Just because you carry the money bags, I walked on water, dude. I walked on water. And James and John said, yeah, but together we have a majority of the inner three. And like, we're the sons of thunder. And Peter said, well, you're the sons of something, but not thunder. I tell you what, I got the keys of the kingdom. I am better than you. He literally, around the table, I am better than you. I deserve Jesus more than you. Can you believe the audacity of Peter and the arrogance of Peter? I can believe it because I get it. Peter is a screw-up with a loud mouth and a big ego. And so Jesus, listen to what he says. Simon, Simon. Now that little... That's not in English, it's in the Greek. Simon, come on. And notice he doesn't call him Peter the rock, because he's not acting like the rock. He's acting like his old self, Simon. Satan has asked to sift you as wheat. Ooh. But I've prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. So Jesus says, Peter, you are going to deny me. And Peter says, Now listen, if you start arguing with Jesus, I know what's going to happen. You're going to lose. And Peter says, no, I'm ready to go and die with you, Jesus. Don't you understand? I will die for you. And he honestly meant it. Just fast forward a couple of hours. They're in the garden. Iscariot comes, gives him a kiss. Peter goes postal. He's got a sword, probably the butcher knife for the Passover lamb. It's got it underneath his tunic. He yanks that thing out, and he cuts off Malchus's ear. Malchus was a servant of the high priest. So he's not like going for, some third-tier kid. He's going for the leader's assistant, because he was right in front of him. Malchus was. And just think about it. Do you really think Peter was trying to cut off his ear? Like, it's not like, oh, stop that. No, he's going for a haircut at the collarbone. Wow! And Malchus was just faster than Peter. Peter's a fat old fisherman, and Malchus just goes, whoo, and the ear pops off. And you should have been there. It's great. Jesus picked up his ear, and he blows in Malchus's ear, and then snaps it back on like a Lego block. Like Peter should have been arrested for assaulting an officer, but there's no evidence except the small trickle of blood behind his ear. Jesus says, Peter, put that thing away. You're going to put someone's eye out. And so he puts the sword away, and things settle down, and they rip Jesus' arms behind his back like a common thief. And all of the apostles, all of them, blew into the darkness. And Peter didn't go far. He's ashamed of himself. He was ready. Listen, he's not a coward. He was ready to take on 600 armed soldiers, and they only had 2 swords. The dude's not a sissy. But he doesn't know what to do without the sword. He doesn't know how to fight a spiritual battle. And some of you were the same way. Like you're ready to die for Jesus. You don't know how to stand up to the opposition with spiritual weaponry. So there Peter is, following the entourage. The other dudes, they split, not Peter. He and John are ducking behind bushes and pillars, and they're following until they get into the courtyard of Caiaphas. And somehow John gets a backstage pass. And he goes out to the street and says, Peter, come on, I got you in. And Peter goes in, and he's kneeling around a campfire. The Bible says it was a charcoal fire, low embers, not a lot of light, and he's warming himself with the soldiers right around him. Again, the dude goes into the lion's den. He goes into the lair of his enemies. Why? Why was Peter there? Because it's dangerous. And these other soldiers are talking about their brave capture of these villains from Galilee and how Jesus is this traitor. And Peter is boiling listening to these stories. And you know how guys all around a campfire, they'll exaggerate everything. And Peter wants to say, that's not how it happened. But he can't say a word. And Peter, sitting there over the course of an hour or so, you know, like at a campfire, you kind of warm the backside, warm the front. Over at the gate is a girl. And the Jews used girls as guards at the gate. And you think, well, that doesn't make any sense. Actually, it does. Because the guard at the gate, there's only one gate that leads into the courtyard. All she has to do, and this is what teenage girls are best at, all she has to do is stay up late at night and scream really loud. Girls are awesome at that. So there she is. She's, oh, don't be offended. You know it's true. And so she's looking at him, and after an hour, she goes, I know him. And she walks up to him and goes, you were with him. He said, girl, you don't know what you're talking about. Get out of here. And she walks away, and she's gossiping. Girls can be good at that too. And so she's talking to the other girls, and that's him, isn't it? And then she talks to one of the dudes, and no, he's the guy that cut off he's a relative of Malchus. He cut off my cousin's ear. I know it's him. And they walk up to him and ask him again. He said, I don't know what you're talking about. And pretty soon, all the guards around the fire are looking at him like staring him down, giving him the skunk eye. You are a Galilean. You are with him. And he said, I swear to God, I don't know the man. And in that moment, 2 things happened. You know one of them. That sound piercing the darkness. Peter freezes. The second thing that happened, he looks across the courtyard into a room, and there Jesus is. He's already been beaten. His eye is swollen. His nose may have been broken. His face is bloodied. But Jesus looks straight at Peter, and Peter knew that Jesus knew that he just betrayed him. And he ran into the darkness and just crumbled, broke down, weeping. Have you ever been there? I swear to you, Jesus, I will never do that. But you find yourself in a courtyard, flat on your back. And what was once unimaginable now is unmanageable. You could never imagine doing that, but here you are, and you don't know how to manage it, and that's what's keeping you from dropping the rock, because you know that he knows what you did. And I'm not worthy to go up there. And you may say, well, I don't believe in God, but the real issue is you don't believe in you. You might say, well, why is there so much suffering in the world? But the real reason is you know that you caused suffering. You might say, I just don't know if God is good, but really it is that you're not sure that you are good, and the unimaginable becomes unmanageable. So how do you deal with that? Here's what you have to understand. I have to understand this, that your good motives don't keep you from bad behavior. And Peter's motives, they're good motives. Why do you think Peter was in the courtyard? It's because he wanted to rescue Jesus. He's looking for a way that the guys can come in and do like a Navy SEAL Team 6 kind of a rescue. At the point at which you think Jesus needs you rather than you need Jesus, what was unimaginable would become unmanageable. It's not until you let him manage it that it becomes manageable. The relationship with your mother. If it's unmanageable, it's because you're not letting him manage it. Your relationship with your enemies, your relationship with your ex, the dude that did something to you that wasn't right, the girl that slandered you behind your back, the one that put posts on social media, you will not be able to manage that until you release it. Palms down to God and let God be God and let Jesus' sacrifice and suffering be enough for you. Then you can have free access to giving your life over to him. See, I want you to see this, because it's not just true about Peter, it's true about you. Failure's never final. And what you've done, look, I get it. There's guilt, there's shame, there's embarrassment. But failure is never final. And God not only can use you in spite of what you've done, God may be able to use you because of what you've done. But you cannot, I'll tell you when it becomes unmanageable is when you treat yourself like Iscariot and not Peter. Iscariot and Peter are different. Iscariot deliberately abandoned Jesus. If you didn't do that, you made a mistake, you screwed up, you failed, and you probably had good motives for it. You were dating him because you wanted to bring him to Jesus. It was a good motive, it's just a bad outcome. You were hanging out with those dudes because you wanted to influence them for Christ and bring good into their life. But because you were there in the wrong place at the wrong time, some bad things happened. It's not your heart that's bad, it was your decisions that were bad. And that makes all the difference. You are not Judas Iscariot. You are the Apostle Peter, someone with a bold faith, but doesn't always make good decisions. And Jesus can overcome any bad decision. He can't overcome a bad heart, but he can overcome a bad decision. And if your heart is for God, he will always, always, always be for you. And that's not the word. The last word is not your failure. The fact is, and I hope you can see this, that your lowest failure is often your highest platform for doing great things for God. And you know that's about Peter. He denied Jesus, and yet he became the key apostle establishing the church. And I've seen that 1,000 times in young people's lives. Can I just tell you one story? Michele sat in my class. Beautiful girl. She was actually from East or West Texas. And in her high school years, she was promiscuous, just with one guy. But he gave her an STD that rendered her infertile. She could never have children. And she carried that guilt with her into Bible college. Now, she's in Bible college. She's going to go into ministry. But I noticed during the year, she got more and more distant. Like, I knew her when she was in high school, but she got more distant from me, and I wondered what's going on. She began to be absent from class a little bit more, and when she was in class, she was wearing all black, and she started to do like black fingernails and black eyeliner. And look, if that's your style, that's not, like, I'm not concerned about the colors, but for her, she was putting on display how she felt about herself. I'm dark, I'm evil. Come to find out, when I confronted her about it, she was living in the dorms, but she actually was spending nights with her boyfriend, who was not a Bible college student. He was actually, this is weird, he was a warlock. Like literally worshiped Satan, and Satan gave him special powers. And he put, again, I don't know if you believe this kind of thing, but I saw it in real life. He put spells on her. She actually spent several weeks in a mental institution because she was losing her mind because of the spells he was putting on her. And so when she was there away from him, she kind of came back to her senses and she broke it off, but he would never let her go. And she kept keeping him at a distance, but the dreams, the evil, violent dreams kept coming. And finally, she went on a mission trip to England to get out of the country away from him. And in the country, she kept having dreams, even though she had no contact with him. Lo and behold, one of the missionaries, as she was talking to him about it, said, "Do you have anything that belongs to him?" She goes, "No, I got rid of everything he gave me." And he said, "Well, let's check your suitcase." And he had snuck in her suitcase a little amulet that was a demonic like symbol. And they destroyed that. She burned everything he ever gave her. She got rid of everything and broke the spell. And he was gone. It's like she got over him. Several years later, she falls in love with Bo. Bo's a good dude, a youth pastor, and she's in youth ministry with him and doing really, really well. And she would stop off at Starbucks on the way home almost every day and cultivate a relationship with this young girl named Cindy. And so Cindy, she would see her every time she goes in and, "How are you doing?" and "What's going on?" And Cindy got engaged. She was very excited about her ring on her finger. And about 2 months later, she hadn't seen Cindy for about 2 months, and she goes back in, sees Cindy. She is a train wreck. I mean, you could see in her face that she's just had a hard season. And she noticed that Cindy's ring wasn't on her finger anymore. And she says, "Cindy, what's going on?" And she said, "Well, life is tough, and my boyfriend is doing this and that." She goes, let's talk. So they got together, and over a cup of coffee, Cindy started describing this guy who was a warlock, a guy who was putting spells on her. And she like named him. She said, "You're engaged to," and she named this guy. She goes, "How do you know that?" Well, because I was living with him as well. Because of Michele, this girl also was able to break all the spells, burn all the amulets, and be free from him. Michele and Bo are still in ministry, and they're doing incredible things for God. What I want to say to you is, I know from Peter, I know from Michele, failure is never final. You are not Judas Iscariot. And if you desire, you are welcome to come and drop your stone in and to receive the forgiveness and freedom that comes through Jesus Christ. Your failure is not final. In fact, your failure may be the highest platform for your greatest impact for Jesus Christ. Come, you're welcome.